Welcome everyone to Torah Talks. Tuesday's program Chazaq has with special guest. Tonight we have with us Rabbi Meir Goldberg all the way from Lakewood. Welcome, Rabbi.
Hi. Welcome.
How you doing?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Rabbi Goldberg is very much involved with the various different Kira program. We're going to hear about that. But tonight's topic is going back to our roots. But before we get to the topic, let's go to your roots, Rabbi. Let us know a little bit more about yourself and the great work you're involved with for the Jewish people.
So I grew up in Far Rockaway, New York.
Queens.
Far Rockaway,
Chazaq
New
with
York.
the Q, strengthening Queens. We started in Queens, we're expanding across the globe.
Right. And I went to Darche as a young man, and I went to Scranton for high school, and I went to Torah for Beis Medrash, in Eretz Yisrael. I went to Lakewood afterwards. I met my wife Addie, who's from Queens.
Woo!
From Kew Garden Hills.
Shout out to Kew Garden Hills.
And Mr. and Mrs. Schreiber, my buried Judy Schreiber, my in-laws in Queens. I spent a lot of time over here, and especially Rabbi Obaum Shul.
Rabbi Obaum Shlita, wow.
And in 2004, I started going on to campus at Rutgers. We started off, it's called Rutgers Jewish Experience. We became part of Meir, which is that big network, so we're the Meir Rutgers Jewish Experience. And now we're part of also Olami. Olami is like our overall grandparent program. So that's
Olami is amazing. Shout out to Olami. Chazaq is also the teens division is part of that, and it's amazing. So
yeah.
So doing Kirov, changing the world. Okay, we like it.
Yeah, just trying to reach as many Jews at Rutgers and other places. We do lots of different programs for Olami as well, outside of Rutgers. But my main focus is at Rutgers University in New Jersey. So.
Okay, and how is that experience over there? What's the matzah? What type of students do you have?
So we get students from all backgrounds. In our organization, we have probably 40%, if I ask who can speak Russian, probably 40% of the hands will go up.
Wow.
So there's a certain realness that they have, which I feel connected to. Also, my father went to the Soviet Union back in 1982 during KGB times. KGB used to follow him. He was a business partner with Mordechai Neustadt, who started an organization at that time to help reach Soviet Jews. So I remember as a child very vividly, he went back again in 89 or 90 to do a concert with the London Boys Choir. And we used to have people come off the plane literally at JFK and would come to our house.
Wow.
So I always felt this special kesher with Jews from the Soviet Union. And but we have Jews from all backgrounds. You know, we have Jews from Israel and just regular Americans. So Jews from all backgrounds are involved.
Amazing. So as we mentioned, tonight's topic is going back to our roots. In school, when studying about history, one might just study it, to get a good grade, to do well on a test, but it doesn't impact their lives. They're just getting the info, writing it on the test, and then they forget it. It doesn't change them. What is the proper way to be inspired from our history, Rabbi, from our roots? What would you say?
So I feel very strongly. I lead a trip to Poland every year. We were just supposed to go in January, but unfortunately got canceled because of COVID. So we're rescheduling it for May. And it's the most powerful experience that we do every year, and it's the most powerful experience that the students do. Now, in terms of importance, going to Eretz Yisrael is obviously the most important thing. But
we were supposed to have a trip to our teenagers to Eretz Yisrael, but again, due to COVID, this was going back a while ago, it had to be changed to Florida.
Right. So yeah, we had a similar situation. We go to Arizona instead. But the most important place obviously is Eretz Yisrael. That's our roots. That's our home. But once in a person's life, whether they're from Poland, whether they're not from Poland, whether they're Sephardi, Ashkenazi, no matter what their background is, you have to go to Poland. I would say Ukraine also, but maybe that's not a good place to suggest with what's going on now. So you got to go back to a roots trip, back to an old country where our ancestors were. And my friend Rosalind Goldstein from Maryland always says, and this is something, we do the trips together, he says that even though our homeland is Eretz Yisrael, but to a large extent, the way we were formed now, Jews now were formed over the last 600-700 years was what we were like in Europe, or a person's from Persian background over there, Bukharan over there, like wherever they are, Moroccan over there. So to a large extent, even though those places are galut, right? They're exile. But still, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from those places that we need to learn, and the only way to learn it really, really well is to go back and experience it. To go back to the shuls, to the synagogues, to the Batei Kvarot, the places where people are buried, right? The cemeteries, all those things. We have to go back to those places, walk the streets where our great grandparents walked, smell the smells. There's a place in Poland where we go. It's called Tarnów. Tarnów was one of the first places where people were shipped off to Auschwitz from. I mean, you walk in Tarnov on a Friday morning. I remember one time it was like 5 degrees, it was freezing, but it was worth it. We're all bundled up. We're walking through the streets of Tarnov, and you could see on the side, on the buildings along the road. I showed my students these little holes in the doorpost, and I said those are mezuzahs. That's where the mezuzah was, and you could see them pried off, and it was unbelievable. And you could see like Yiddish writing still on the wall. So it was very, very powerful, and those are the places that sort of come to life. And then it's not enough just to walk the streets and you have to tell the stories. You have to sing and dance. You have to have the total experience. And even though after 6 days a person's like, I've had it, I don't want to be back here. It's too there was too much death and destruction, but it sits in you and it changes a person where they feel much more connected to who they are, and it propels them forward so that going forward, this is who they want to really become an extension of.
I hear. So it seems like you said, like, very sad and somewhat depressing to know what happened in these areas. But what lessons can we learn from experiencing our rich history live? Like, what's...
So I want to say one thing. It's dafka, not sad. I always tell the students, if we go to Poland and you're sad when you come out, we failed. Like, it has to be an upbeat trip. And now it could be, you'll say, well, wait a second, you're going to a place and you're talking about death and destruction everywhere.
6 million
Jews. So what's happy about that? So the answer is, when we go, we're going to go, let's say we go to Lublin, right? So we're going to go and learn in Chachmei Lublin, in the yeshiva of Chachmei Lublin, right? The place where Meir Shapiro, who started Daf Yomi, but in those years, in the 1930s, it was the greatest yeshiva in Europe. Well, certainly for the Hasidim it was. And that was like a place of Jewish roots, which is like an unbelievable place. We actually go there. We study Torah with the students in the building.
The building is still intact, and
yeah. It was renovated, and it's unfortunately it's not like an active shul or anything like that. It's more of like a museum type of thing, but it has the look of a shul, and we go and we actually use it for learning, and it's tremendous, unbelievable. We're talking what was it like to be in the yeshiva then? What was the yeshiva about her experiencing? What was a woman in seminary, right, experiencing? Like, so we explain, who we sit and we have meals in the Beis Yaakov where Sarah Schneer started the Krakow seminary, and you see the pictures of these young women, and they're really the pioneers for women's education today.
The Beis Yaakov movement is all over the world, and it started, like you were saying, with Sarah Schneer.
Right.
That's inspiring. So that what you're saying, that you turn the experience from a sad experience to an inspiring one.
Right.
To learn from our ancestors and what they went through and how great they became.
Right. I'll give you one story as an example. We're sitting in a barracks in Auschwitz. This is the first trip we did. It was us and University of Maryland, and we're sitting in a barracks, and there's a girl there. Her name is Addie Mandelbaum. She since got married, and she's a beautiful family. But she's sitting there. We asked the students to get up and give testimony. We say, we want to hear the stories that you have from your ancestors. You tell us what happened. So she says that her grandmother and her grandmother's sister were the only ones surviving from their family. The rest had been killed out. And they decided that the only way they're going to get through Auschwitz is to stay together and to survive. And they held on to each other, next to each other every day, till about 2 months before the end of the war. Addie's grandmother wakes up one morning, she's a 15-year-old girl, she's got nobody left in life, and her sister died the night before. So so what's she going to do? She feels so depressed, she's ready to kill herself. So she's walking to the electrified fence that separated the men's and the women's camp to throw herself onto the fence. It's the only way out. So as she's walking to the fence, she's walking there slowly, and she feels a smash over her head. She looks up and she sees there's an SS officer screaming at her and yelling at her, "You dirty Jew, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to take the easy road out. Well, I'm not going to let you." And he hits her over the head again. She's out cold. Somehow, someone drags her back to the barracks. She survives 2 months for 2 months. And Addie Mandelbaum, her granddaughter, is sitting there now in the barracks telling us the story.
Wow.
So she says, "Well, how do I look at this Nazi, right? He saved I'm only here because of him, but he was a cruel, vicious tyrant." But I wanted to add on to that. The grandmother, when she was sitting there crying, and she saw no hope in her life, right? You know the famous story of one of the great tzaddikim, Choni Hamaga, Choni the circle maker. And it's a famous story where he sees a guy growing a carob tree, and he says, "How long is it going to take to grow the carob tree?" So the guy says it could take up to 70 years. If you go on Wikipedia, by the way, you'll see that the male carob trees only give off fruit after 70 years. That's what he was referring to, probably, right? Because in those days they couldn't graft the trees to make sure it was female or male. Right? Female trees give off after 8 years, but male trees after After 70 years. So what was he saying? Sometimes it takes 70 years. It takes a person's whole life to see their dreams turn into reality. Sometimes you don't harvest the fruits of the carob for 70 years. So Addie's grandmother, this was in 2014, by the way. It was literally 70 years from when they got out of Auschwitz. Addie's grandmother couldn't see in 70 years she's going to have a granddaughter who's going to reconnect with Torah and Yiddishkeit and Judaism and have a family of her own. She couldn't see that. But 70 years later, she was able to see that. So that's the type of experience. So we were walking out of Auschwitz. So the way it works is, if you ever go to Birkenau, the second camp in Auschwitz, there's this sort of like this entranceway, and the tracks run all the way in, about half a mile. And the way it worked was, they would unload the Jews on both sides of the trains, and most Jews would get marched right into these gas chambers, which were right up there, and the younger and stronger ones would get moved into the camp to be slave labor. Right, so we were standing all together at the top of it's like a cement block at the top of the tracks, and we're basically telling these stories and ready to march out. But we weren't marching out depressed. We were marching out proud. We were marching out inspired, and we all start to sing. So what are we singing? We're singing Yaakov Shweki's song, "V'Hakadosh Baruch Hu Matzilenu Miyodim." Hakadosh Baruch Hu Matzilenu. So we're singing this whole song, V'Hisha Amda, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Matzilenu. We walk the entire way. We're walking till the end, and as we're about to exit the camp, so me and the guys, we just create like a circle, and the girls are in one section, the guys are in another section, and we start singing HaKadosh Baruch Hu Matzilenu over and over 15 minutes. I look up, and for the first time, it's always overcast and cloudy. I look up for the first time. There's a clear sky and a clear moon, full moon. So we know that the moon is a mashal, is a parable for the Jewish people. Sometimes the Jewish people are very small, you can only see a sliver, and sometimes you see the full moon in the middle of the month. So that's what I was thinking. 70 years ago, the moon was very small. You couldn't see anything. There was no hope for Klal Yisrael. 70 years later, they have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. They're studying Torah and yeshivas and Eretz Yisrael and Queens over here. So you have all this unbelievable opportunity. So that was the full moon, and it's full. So that's why people are happy when they come out, because they see from the tears but you see the potential of what could be.
Unbelievable. Wow. Very inspiring. Just a thought, just thinking about it just gives you the chills. But I could so see how a person could go inspired from these type of events. So Rabbi, we live in a selfie generation where people don't experience the moment, but rather are more concerned about how their viewers and followers will experience their videos. So everyone's taking out their phones and stuff. But how can we navigate this digital world and experience the present moment? What would you suggest for the world out there? That literally every time I go to events, there's most of the people are just holding their phones. I'm like.
The key is to really do the experience in a way that touches the emotions. And a person understands they have to put away the phone and just focus in the moment. Living the moment, and really, when we go, so we'll be singing, we'll be dancing, we'll go to Rabbi Melech of Lezhensk, we'll be dancing around and singing, jumping around, make a tish, do all those things. Before we go out of Auschwitz, we have a message. So we ask people first to pick up a rock, something that's like a tangible reminder of where you were. Right, and we say a message, different messages that we tell the guys. It's a famous story from Rav Pesach Krohn. He says a great story.
A dear friend.
So Rav Pesach says, a beautiful story. He says after the Holocaust, so the Klosenberger Rebbe was really the teacher and the Rebbe for all these broken survivors. And he himself had lost a wife and 11 children. So he started a yeshiva in the DP camps, the displaced person camps, to be able to strengthen the broken survivors. So there's one boy who doesn't, from a group of guys, doesn't want to have anything to do with anybody, he won't talk to anybody. So the boys come to the Rebbe and they say, Rebbe, he won't talk to us, he won't interact with us, how do we reach him? So the Rebbe says, bring him to me. So the boy goes to the Klosenberg Rebbe and he won't talk, he's very upset. He says, you're angry? He says, I know why you're angry. So he holds him and he says, it's because they took the best ones and they just left us. And he hugs him again. He says, they took the best ones, they just left us. They took the best ones and they just left us. So I tell the students, I said, well, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, they're not here anymore, right? Some of them died in the Holocaust, some of them came, some of them assimilated, right? But the best ones were taken, but now it's up to us. Now we have to be the ones to be able to give over to the next generation, to be the link in that chain. And if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for us. So we have to be the ones who are going to be. It's just left up to us.
It's left to us. Powerful, amazing, Rabbi. Good chizuk, good inspiration. So you told us so much about these trips. Very inspiring. If one wants to go on this trip, does he have to be like in the college world to be part of it? I'm sure there's programs and stuff that's out there, right?
There's tons of programs, tons of places. And the thing is, you have to make sure you go to a place that's very heavy on the inspiration. You have to go with the right people, with the right music, with the right singing, with the right chizuk. That's really the person's. But there's a lot of opportunities. I see
and the Jewish communities over there. I know Rabbi Oban's shul does it. They do it. I'm saying, but there's the Jewish community there is vibrant in different parts of.
Not so much. It's a little bit scattered in Poland. There are shuls and there is activity, but it's hard. I wouldn't say that you can
kosher food is
you can get kosher food. That's something that the tour guide should be able to access. And there's even a restaurant in Warsaw, and they can arrange for things. But it's important to go with a group. If you go by yourself, it's really
lost, you wouldn't know where to go.
Yeah, and even if you go to a place, you may not. It's important to have someone who knows the stories, who can sort of give over the inspiration in a real powerful way. I see that just shuls go together just for 3-4 days at a time, and each shul should go with and take people along who can both on the musical end and really on the historical end and the inspirational end.
So it's connecting, not only connecting, but going back to our roots as well. Right. Rabbi, very, very inspiring. If you could tell us one final message that we could give over to the world.
So I want every Jew to know this. I'll look right into the camera and tell this to every Jew. That I was once sitting in the student center at Rutgers with a student who told me, he says, Rabbi, this is not for me. I'm not interested. I'm not. I don't want to meet anymore. I don't want to study anymore. I said, no problem. I said, you probably never see me again, but I just want to tell you one thing. I said, throughout most of Jewish history, most Jews, they fell away. And so what you see today is just the remnants of a very specific group of Jews who managed to stay around as Jews until this point. However, the only reason you're here is because very likely 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, you probably had a great-grandmother or a great-grandfather or something, some ancestor who thought that Judaism was so important that they literally would be willing to die for what they believed in. So it's probably worth it to figure out what Judaism is all about if your great-grandfather was willing to die for it. That was my message. So that's what I tell every single Jew. You have to know what it is before you reject it, before you walk away from it. You have to know what it is, why it's important, not in a shallow way, in a real way, to get to really understand it before you say this isn't for me. Because you have the only reason you're here is because you have ancestors who are willing to die for this idea.
Amazing. They were willing to die for it. We have to be willing to live for it. Live a life of Torah. Live a life of Judaism. Amazing Torah talk, Rabbi Meir Goldberg Shlita. Always a pleasure. And we want to remind everyone watching that every Tuesday night we have special guests, Chazaq Torah Talks, timely Torah Talks. And we want to give a shout out to Torah Anytime. Thank you very much for being one of the many hosts. We have all these different podcasts and social media and zachins, but I don't understand this stuff. But what I do know is that I get a lot of amazing feedback. We appreciate the feedback. We appreciate the constructive feedback as well. If there's any, feel free to send that to us as well. Shout out to dailygiving.com for $1 a day goes a very, very far away. And we want to encourage everyone to not only be inspired, but to send it out to your family, your friends, your neighbors. Yeshikach, Rabbi Goldberg.
Thanks so much.
Yagda Torah V'Yader.
Amen.